Happy Friday, everybody. I'm gonna get started, and as people join, I'll admit them into the thing. We had about 20 people sign up for it. I think we have about 10 or 11 in right now. Little bit different format this time, as going to do it more as a workshop. I'll go over it briefly, but we have a video on YouTube as to what the beneficial ownership report is and what it's about. I'll touch on it briefly here, but mostly I want to spend some time just showing you how to go about filing it yourself if you want to do that. Obviously, if you need help and you want us to do it for you, we'll be glad to help you out. I think it's easy enough that if you set aside an hour of time, you'll be able to do it yourself. There's nothing really complicated about it. In prepping to file it yourself, what I think you're going to want to do is whatever computer, and I'd recommend doing it on a computer. Maybe it's just because I got bad eyesight, but have a copy of your photo ID, whether it's your driver's license or your passport. And then if you're married, also have a copy of your spouse's photo ID, because you're going to need to upload that picture. And I think if you're in the process of doing it and you get to the screen that we'll ultimately see, and it says, please upload it, and then you're fumbling around with it, and it'll probably create a little bit more stress than you need. So when you're getting ready to file yours, or if we're filing it, we'll need a copy of the photo ID. I used my driver's license for mine, pretty easy. It's just information that they use to confirm who you are. So let's get started. I'm going to try to share my screen, and if you've been in one of these before, you know I'm pretty inept at this, so we'll try to get started here. So again, this is about the mandatory beneficial ownership reporting. And just as a side note, what I'm hoping to talk about today is who needs to file. That's basically all of our clients, with the exception of a few, and I'll go over that exception later. What information do we need to file? You're going to want to have your information about your entity, whether it's your LLC or your S corporation, C corporation, available to you, because they're going to need to know what state you filed it in, what your EIN number, ITIN number are, things like that. And then you're going to need to know the information about who the potential beneficial owners are. And we'll talk briefly about what they're going to require or who they're going to require to file. And then what I want to spend the bulk of the time on, and like I say, unmute yourself if you have a question on this. We're going to walk through on how to go about filing one yourselves. Ultimately, at the end of this, probably early next week, if I don't get a chance this weekend, I'm going to throw this up on YouTube. So if you want to go to YouTube and just watch it, pause it when we're on a screen that you need to fill out, and then move on to the next screen, it might be a useful tool to help you complete your filing. So let's go back and talk about what is the beneficial ownership and why did it come about. So basically, the government's worried about small businesses being used for money laundering, tax evasion, things along that nature. So they're requiring all small business entities to file a report who the beneficial owners are, who has substantial control over those entities. I'm mixed on this, because I'm thinking if I'm a crook, I'm not going to report the right information anyway. So how are you going to know that I'm cheating or not? But it's Congress, so what can you do? Basically, what they're worried about is Steve sets up his law practice in California, and then I open up something like Nevada LLC or Nevada C Corp, and I transfer money over to that C Corp where it's unknown exactly who that entity is owned by, right? So I'm using it to maybe evade California taxes, even though this is a federal law. But maybe I'm shifting it from my 37% tax bracket down to the 21% bracket over there. Or maybe I just don't want my creditors to know that I have this other entity, and I may be trying to defraud them in a lawsuit as far as the potential for collections. So that's why we're here. Unfortunately, I just think it's just piling on more paperwork for the small business owner that's already inundated by doing a lot of paperwork. Some good news, like I said, it's fairly easy to file the report. And as we're going to see a little later on, we only need to file it once. It's not a yearly requirement, with the caveat that if some of the information changes, then we're going to need to update our initial filing report. So we're going to file it once in 2024, hopefully before January 1st, 2025. And then if information on that report changes, substantial information, we're going to need to just go back in there and update our report. So that's it. So the good news is, hopefully we're like in a one and done unless we're changing things. So when are the due dates? So if you set up a new entity in 2024, you have 30 days, technically more 90 under the current guidance, to file your initial report. So entities set up in 2024, 90 days from the date your articles are filed. For entities existing prior to 2024, we have until January 1st, 2025. We could file it early, and that's what I'm going to recommend everybody do, because who knows if the government system shuts down because they get 30 million people trying to file all at once, and now we file late. So just file it as soon as you can. Like I said, half hour to an hour, I'd probably set aside to get the initial filing done. Who needs to file? So I'm telling all my clients, basically, with a few exceptions, that they're going to need to file. So companies required to report are called reporting companies. Most small entities, this is LLCs, this is S corporations, this is C corporations, this is single member LLCs where we don't even really file a tax return other than the California one. They're going to all need to report. For some people, this could be onerous in the fact that they have multiple entities that they're going to need to report the exact same information for. If I have 5 LLCs that I hold real estate in, I'm going to need to file for each one of those 5 LLCs. And like I say, the only thing it's going to probably change is the company information on that. Why? As I touched on before, it's part of the Anti-Money Laundering Act. And this is directly out of the thing. Help shed light on criminals who evade taxes, hide their illicit wealth, and defraud employees and customers, and hurt honest U.S. businesses through their misuse of shell companies. Again, like, I think if I was a crook and I was setting up a whole bunch of shell companies that I'm not the owner of, I'd just file the beneficial ownership report under the person that I've illegally set the corporation up under. I don't know why I would, if I'm a crook, put my information down on it, but this is where we're at. Which type of entities? So they actually put out a flow chart. Like I said, I think it's going to be everybody. So I'm not going to worry about foreign countries. I don't have any clients that have entities set up in foreign countries. But under U.S. law, is the company a corporation? Yes. Maybe a domestic reporting company. No. Is it an LLC? Yes. It could be a domestic reporting company. Like I say, LLCs, S corporations, C corporations, you're going to all need to file unless you meet, I think there's one exception that I'll touch on briefly in a little bit. There's 23 technical exceptions to it, but most of these are for, banks, banking type things. So if you look at it, it's banks, venture capital funds, federal or state credit unions, money transmitting services, pooled investments, tax exempt entities. The one exception that may apply for some of our clients is exception 21 of the 23, and that is for what they consider large operating businesses. And by large, they mean 20 full-time employees. The prior year, so our 2023 tax return showed at least $5 million of revenue. So that'll be our gross receipts. And obviously, we have a physical location in the United States. So if you have an entity that meets these 6 criteria, then you're technically exempt from filing. I would be cautious for anybody whose entity is right around $5 million. You're at 5.2, 5.3, because remember, it's the prior year. So if all of a sudden you have a downturn, the market downturns, and you're at 4.9, and it's 2 years later, and you've totally forgot about this beneficial ownership reporting requirement, we start to tag on penalties. Oh, you having problems seeing the screen? Let me try to expand it, and I'll get rid of my share. And then I'll also link the information up there for everybody and stuff like that. But like I say, it's $5 million gross receipts, and that's going to be your starting point, 20 employees. And they're full-time employees. They can't be 20 part-time employees. Okay. What must we report for the reporting company? And what I'll do is prior to the end of this, I will drop my PowerPoint into the chat so you could actually download the PowerPoint presentation too. Not sure if I could do that right now. Let me see how I could go about doing this. Give me 1 second. I'll try to drop the PowerPoint in if you're having a problem following the small text in. I'll do it at the end of the meeting. It's not allowing me to do it because it's currently in use, so I apologize about that. So what do we need to report on the company? We need the full legal name. This is going to be based off your articles. We need the complete corporate address, street address. You can't use a PO box. You need the state in which it was formed, California, if you're a California entity, or if you're a Nevada entity, you set up in Nevada or Wyoming or anything like that, you're going to want to put that information in there. And then we're going to need the tax identification number, the EIN. So it's pretty basic. What else do we report on the beneficial owner? Full name, legal name. I usually use whatever's showing up on the driver's license itself. Birth date, their complete address. Now, this address has to be your home address. It can't be the office address. And a valid government issued photo ID, including identifying number, right? So who do we need to report? Anybody that owns 25% or more in the entity. So obviously, most of us have 1 or 2 shareholders or partners in our LLC. We're going to need to report them because obviously it's going to be over 25% for the 2 of them. Also, substantial control. So even though my S corporation, my law firm is in the name, my name alone, right? Steve Schroeder, because I'm the only attorney. I'm going to report my spouse because under California community property law, she technically has a 50% equity stake in any assets I own, including my S corporation. So I'm recommending anybody that, like I said earlier, is married in a domestic partnership, I would put their information in there just to be safe. So that's basically what I wanted to cover on that. Like I say, if you have questions on it, or if you want a more in-depth one, I'll show you the YouTube channel. I think I only have like 9 or 10 videos up there anyways. One of them is specifically on an in-depth review of the beneficial ownership reporting requirements. But let's look at the actual filing and what you need to do. So where you're going to go is, if you look at it, it's the https / boiefiling.fincin.gov. You could Google it, but when you bring it up, it's going to look something along like this. Okay, right? And welcome to the BOI e-filing system. What you're going to want to do is check down on the bottom left box, file your BOI report. And what will happen is it'll bring you up to, how do you want to file it? Do you want to paper file it, or do you want to electronically file it? Everybody should electronically file these reports because we want proof that it's accepted. If we mail it in and it's anything like COVID where things just go in a paper bin and it never gets filed properly, I think we could be in a lot of trouble trying to prove it, right? So we're going to just prepare online. Right? And the first screen you're going to see is, what type of report are we going to be filing? Initially, what all of us should be doing initially is filing the initial report, right? If at some point later on, some of our information changes, right? Then what we're going to want to do is correct it. If we notice we had an error, update our prior report, things along that nature. So is this still small for most people? Can somebody just type into chat real quick for me and let me know? Because then I'll figure out how to reshare the screen. So let me see if let me stop sharing for just 1 quick second, and I'll try to reshare it as a full screen without my picture involved. Rhoda, is that a little bit better? Can you guys see it a little bit better? Perfect. So let me jump back real quick, and then just because it might have been a little. So like I said, now that you can actually see the full screen, we're going to file our initial BOI report, right? And then, like I said before, we want to prepare it on the web. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be filing our initial report. So when you go on there, you're going to just file your initial report. It automatically pre-fills in the date for the report. And then you're going to just hit next. You could read the Privacy Act if you want to, but we're going to hit next. Okay. If you look up at the top, it says reporting company. This is going to be the information regarding your entity, right? So you could request to receive a FinCEN ID. This is sort of like a Social Security. If you ever have to update your report or not, they'll give you a specific like ID number that you could use in place of refilling in all this information all the time. For now, I'm going to leave it blank. So reporting company name, that's going to be how your entity shows on your articles of incorporation. Like, so losses. So you're going to just type it based on what you had on there. Now, one thing that you need to be aware is if you filed DBAs, doing business as fictitious names, for each DBA that you have to include that information here too. So, you know, if I wanted to do one like Dewey, Cheatham and Howe, you know, tax firm, right? I'd have to fill in that information here. But for now, legal entity name, right? And then when we scroll down, tax identification type. So if you type in here, it has a little drop-down menu. We're going to do EIN, which is basically the identification number for entities. I'm not exactly sure why they have Social Security number down, because for all I know, I don't know any entity that would just be using your Social Security number. Jurisdiction, country, if you look at it, if foreign tax ID only. So like I say, all we're going to fill out on this section is section 7. We're going to be reporting our EIN number. And then we're going to put our ID number. Now, it's pretty good. Like if I go too far, you know, on there, it's going to tell me that it must be exactly 9 characters, right? So no spaces, because if I do more than 9, it's going to throw it out, right? So you just want to put in your ID number, no spaces. You get this off of your tax return, the letter sent by the IRS for your entity, whatever it might be, you're going to input it here. And again, we don't worry about the jurisdiction if it's a foreign ID only, right? Because the next section will ask, in which country did we file? Obviously, United States. What state? Drop down menu. California, if you're in Nevada or Utah, you'd fill that in. We're not going to worry about tribal jurisdiction at this point because I don't have any clients that are formed under a tribal jurisdiction. And then we fill out our address, right? You know, I would put your suite number right on here if you have a suite number, just so they have it. If you have a home office and your home is your primary office location, I would put your apartment number if you have an apartment number, because you want to make sure if any correspondence gets sent out to you, you get that it gets to you, right? U.S. territory, United States, state, California, and then the zip code. So we're just putting in our information for our corporation. Now, like I said, we may have to update this if we move our corporate office, right? And this information is no longer current. We're going to have to come back in here to that initial, where we marked initial filing and put corrected or amended. And then we just hit next. Company applicant. You could ignore this section, right? Because we're going to check the box existing corporation. We're filing for our entities that were formed prior to January 1, 2024. So that's going to be most of us. And then when you see it, when existing company is indicated, all company applicant fields will be cleared, disabled. Do you wish to continue? What a company applicant is, it's going to be the attorney or the CPA, or maybe yourself, that turns around and files their own articles of organization or incorporation in the year 2024. The person who sets up the corporation in 2024, 2025. You know, they just want to know who's incorporating all these people. So we're going to just hit yes because we want to continue, right? We won't worry about any of this stuff, right? Because it's the company applicant. And now we get down to the beneficial owners. So this is going to be everybody that has an interest in the corporation of over 25%. It's ownership interest or substantial control. So if I have a mid-sized company, maybe I have 15 employees, I don't meet the exemption for the over 5 million, and I have an office manager that does literally everything for my company because I'm just too busy. I would probably want to include my office manager's information here because they have substantial control. If I have, somebody that's like a CFO, a chief financial officer, or maybe a controller for my entity, I'm going to want to include their information, right? So it may not just be yourself or your spouse. It could be somebody within the business that has substantial control. Maybe it's a member on the board, on your board. It could be, like I say, if you have a separate president, CFO, somebody like that on the entity. So if you ever have questions, always feel free to pick up the phone. But like I say, err on the side of caution when it comes to filling this out and include more information rather than less, right? So beneficial ownership, number one, is it a parent or guardian? No. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put in our information, right? Oops, let's get the right thing, right? Obviously, if it doesn't have a little red asterisk, I'm not going to fill it in, right? And then I'm going to make myself feel a little bit older or younger than I am. And then I'm going to put in my home address. So you don't want to use the business address, even if that's what it shows on your articles or something like that for where you want to specifically ask for our home address. But I'm going to just put in my address again. And then the one thing they're going to ask for is what type of identifying document are we going to use, right? So is it going to be a state issued driver's license? That's probably 99.5% of us. If you look down at it, it could be our US passport. I think those are the two that most of us are going to use, but I'm pretty sure most people are going to just put in their driver's license. And then we're going to put in something, right? Whatever the number might be. Country of jurisdiction, obviously, unless we have a foreign driver's license, the state in which that was issued, we don't worry about the tribe. And then, like I said, where it becomes a little tricky is we got to upload the document itself. So I have it on my desktop. I think that'd be the best thing. You just drag and drop it, right? So I think it just becomes a little bit more complicated for us if we don't have it pre-prepped up already on the computer that we're going to be using to file this, right? And then you hit next. And then it just asks, who's filing this? Where are we going to be getting this thing down to, right? So Steve, confirm it. Who's filing it? And then it's going to ask, I certify that I am authorized to file this report on behalf of the reporting company. I further certify on behalf of the reporting company that the information contained in the BR is true and correct. So you hit agree. And then the compliance reminder. So this is where I mentioned before, if things change, we are under an obligation to update it. I think probably the biggest thing is going to be we move, right? Or either the company or the entity moves, or we personally move. I think the other things that are going to be happening, unfortunately, in life is divorce, right? Like, so if we have a person on there and we get divorced and our name changes, right? Now all of a sudden I have to update the document. If I move out of state, not only do I have to update the filing, but I might have a new driver's license. And since that driver's license isn't the one I used, I have to upload the new driver's license. So that's what the compliance reminder basically says. The willful failure to report. I'm not sure what willful is. I mean, I'm pretty forgetful myself, but willful failure to report complete beneficial ownership information to FinCEN, the willful failure to update, and that's what we just talked about, beneficial ownership information provided to FinCEN when previously reported, or the willful provision of false or fraudulent beneficial ownership information may result in civil and criminal penalties. The civil penalty is what's scary. It is $500 a day. So we have 30 days once one of these actions occurs. We move, we get divorced, the company changes its address. We have 30 days from that date, that triggering event, to update this. Day 31, potentially, we're starting to incur a $500 a day penalty, and there is no cap on that penalty. So if we don't update it for 2 years, we could be looking at a $365,000 penalty, right? So like I say, I think you have to try to mental note anything changes on the corporation, address wise or not. we want to make sure that we update that. And yes, if you get married and your last name changes, right, you're going to need to, one, file it for your name change, and two, you probably have a new beneficial owner that you're going to need to update the information for. If we sell the practice, do we have to report that we sold it? Not to my knowledge. You do still need, let's say I sold the practice in July of 2024. I'd still have to file my initial report for the 2024. If you close down the business, you're going to need to report or update potentially, in 2024. Let me say I closed the business or I sold it in 2024. I still have to report the 2024. If I sell it in 2025, I would think depends what kind of sale, right? Is it a stock sale where I sell the stock of the corporation and somebody is now taking over my existing entity? They will need to file to update the information, right? If I sell the assets of the business and I close down my business, I don't think so. The business is no longer in existence and they have our initial report. So I don't think we'd need to do it for that. Yeah, so I had this exact thing, Max. If my current address differs from my driver's license address, do I use the driver's license? Need to be updated? I don't think you need to update the driver's license per se to file the beneficial ownership report. I'd put my current address down there, and then when your driver's license gets updated, you're going to want to update the new one. But the address should be what your new address is anyways, right? So you just upload the new driver's license to there. Yes, so like I said, I did see that. If you do get married, if your last name changes, right, that's a name change, we're going to need to file a corrected or updated BOI report. We may also need to file, because now we have a spouse, and under California law, they have potentially 50% interest in our entity, absent some kind of separate property agreement or a prenuptial. And I think we've had to file to include that in there. Any other questions real quick on that? Obviously, then what we do is we check that we are human. We're going to check out, whatever their caption is that we need to, do, right? And then we will hit submit. But that's basically it. So like I said before, it is a pretty straightforward filing process, right? Like, I think if we're prepared, we have our articles of incorporation, we have the tax return handy, so we could get the EIN number off of it, and we have the driver's license of the potential people that are owners. And then, like I say, I think it took us maybe 15 minutes to file it together. I don't think it's hard. I think they're going to be very forgiving if there's errors and you have to go back in there and correct something. But again, you got to go through a lot before you hit submit, because if I want to go back and update something on the reporting company, I just click on the box, right? And then I get updated. So just verify everything before you hit that final submit button, and you should be good right on there. Let me get back. Let me take a look at the question. Sorry about that. Oh, yeah. So let's go back. Okay. Sorry about that, Glenn. Yeah. So at the very top of adding a beneficial owner, this is owner 1, right? And then if I want to add another one, I just hit beneficial owner 2, and then I get input their stuff. So you can add as many as you need to on this, and then fill in their information down below. So you could add as many as you want. Does that answer it, Glenn? And then obviously for each additional beneficial owner, you're going to need to drag and drop their photo ID into the bottom of the screen. Is there any other questions on that, right? And like I say, if you're just not comfortable doing it and you'd like us to do it, I think I talked to the girls. I think we're charging like $350 or something like that. But I really think if you just sat down with the information on your screen, bring up the YouTube video, which will be over on the weekend or on Monday, and then just hit pause as you're filling in a section, move on to the next section. And then, like I say, review everything before you finally hit submit, just to make sure there's no typos in a street address, because then you're gonna have to file it corrected, right? Like, so when you go to the filing, oops, where is it? When you go to the filing, if you notice after you hit submit that there's an error, you're going to correct prior report. If you get married or, something, you get divorced, you move, you're going to update the prior report. And then, like I said, you're going to just keep moving forward from there. I'm not sure what the question is. So you could look at the specific exemptions, but remember what they're trying to figure out is the larger entities are going to be exempt. So they're thinking banks because they have a lot of money under deposit, things along that nature. I don't think if you are a mortgage broker that you're going to qualify for an exemption under there. Yeah, I mean, basically you own and operate a federally insured bank is what you're going to be looking for. And like I say, even if you think you may qualify for the exemption, I would still file the report, right? Because if you're in error and it was due January 1 and FinCEN sends you a report saying, hey, look, we noticed you filed a federal income tax return, but we don't see the beneficial ownership report, and it's 3 years down the road, and now you owe $500,000 in back penalties. Is it really worth it? Because this stuff doesn't end up going to anybody else other than FinCEN to try to track whether these entities are filing, right? There's no filing fee for filing it. There's just penalties for not filing it and knowing we should have. Any other questions on this? Hey, good seeing you too, doctor. And like I say, if you're doing it on your own and you're doing it Monday through Friday, and I happen to be in the office and you just have a quick question, pick up the phone. Shoot me an email. If you have a question as you're filling out the report, you can't save it. I don't think. I haven't tried to save the report, but if you're on a question and you're doing your draft, because like I say, you could just delete it. I could always close it out, right? Take a screenshot, highlight your question on the screenshot, send it over to me, and I'll tell you what to put on there. I think it's going to be pretty straightforward once you get in there and stuff like that. It's just scary because we're filing it with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. And anytime you hear financial crime and you're filing something with them, you just get a little bit nervous. I've probably done 15 of these now. And like I say, it's pretty straightforward. Just don't rush it. Take your time, put in your information. I don't know. I put mine in there. I put middle initial F period. I'd probably leave off punctuations on your names and stuff like that, just because they're going to look. I don't see F period anywhere on this guy's birth certificate or driver's license. So I'd just be slow and steady. And like I say, I think you guys all have it. And anytime questions, always ask. Okay, so like I said, I didn't think it would be too long as a seminar. I'll have this probably up on the internet or on YouTube within a couple days, and it should be good. So hope you guys all have a great weekend. If there's no other questions, I'm going to let you go. Enjoy the rest of your lunch, and I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you.